Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today we're talking about Beethoven Symphony number 8, because we've been doing them all. We left out the two outliers, numbers 4 and numbers 8 for last. Actually, I didn't, because we talked about that fabulous Bernard Haitink recording that couples the 4th and the 8th, which is amazing, with the LSO, one of the greatest things Haitink did in his later career, at the high point of his London Symphony Beethoven cycle. So yes, we have mentioned them, but I still, if you want them separately or you want individual performances, or it's Beethoven, there's a billion recordings, probably thousands of them, which could be the greatest recordings ever. So I want to do the 8th individually, so I can give it the love and attention that it surely deserves as Beethoven's funniest symphony. It's an incredibly funny symphony. It's wonderful. And it has the most intense climax of all of his orchestral works. The climax of the development section of the first movement, which is just the most fantastic example of how to screw tension tauter and higher and tauter and higher and more intense. It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. But it's a climax that's almost impossible to play clearly. It really is difficult. It's a very difficult movement to get right. After you get past the first movement of the 8th, the other 3 really sort of take care of themselves. Because the humor in them is built in, essentially. The second movement, you can't blow it. You just can't. The same thing is true of the minuet. That wonderful, pompous da 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 da. But it just does its own thing. And the finale too. The finale just needs discipline, because it's but it doesn't have to be that fast, but it has to be really clean and really clear. Schulte said that was the only moment in Beethoven that could not be played on the piano, because it's essentially built out of a string tremolo, and you have to really, it requires the sound of the violins. But, the rest of it is all just coda. The whole movement is over in like the first 2 minutes, formally. And then the rest of it is just this gigantic coda where Beethoven's having a fabulous time, trying to fool you into thinking when it's going to end. But the first movement is the one that makes or breaks it. Absolutely makes or breaks it. And so, the greatest recording ever for Beethoven's 8th is this one, Günter with the NDR Symphony. It's funny how, I mentioned this before, how Günter seems to have disappeared. Now that, RCA immediately deleted everything. He died, even though they recorded all of his Bruckner 400 times. But he only made one Beethoven cycle. He did do occasional extra performances of the 5th and the 6th, but basically there is one Beethoven cycle. And it is so good. It's so fabulous. He knew he wasn't going to do it better the second time around. And you really hear it in the first movement of the 8th. Because as the tension is getting built up, you hear better than any other performance the layering of texture, the clarity of the instrumental voices, and not in a mechanical or micromanagey sort of way. No, in a way that actually, just creates this enormous sense of power. Just listen to the timpani parts. How clear the timpani parts are. You never hear exactly what Beethoven wrote down there, but it's a very complex and interesting part that adds to the accumulating tension if you can hear it. And with Vant, you hear it perfectly. It just cuts through the texture, and in a way that never draws attention to itself. It all just becomes this cumulative dynamo that explodes into the recapitulation, with fabulous clarity of the bass lines. Because remember, the main theme at that recapitulation is in the bass. That's part of the joke. It builds up this huge climax, and you expect to hear da 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 da, but you don't. You don't hear that at all. What you hear is this thing is going da 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 da, And then a bar later than you expect it, and the basses, you hear, and most performances you don't hear it at all. It's not clear exactly where the recapitulation happens, which can be fine because it's part of Beethoven's intention. It's if you only notice it in retrospect, that can be part of the joke as well. It's not like it's essential, but if you do hear it, when it is done in that kind of a way, with that kind of virtuoso handling of orchestral timbre and dynamics, and oh my God, it's a whole nother world. It really, really is. And of course, the other three movements just go fabulously, and we don't need to worry about them. So I really think it's nice to give this Beethoven cycle, which is one of the 2 or 3 best ever made, easily, frankly, some extra love in areas where people don't expect it. Listen to this eighth. Listen to it carefully. Listen to it without distraction. You will hear things that you do not hear anywhere else and which are absolutely right and extraordinary. If you've got a score, follow it with a score. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing performance. I guarantee you that. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.